judging by your letters and comments, has had another good tour himself. And the same goes for Phil Liggett. Here they are.
This is the beautiful Chateau of Versailles, which is now a monument of French history. Last weekend, the French celebrated the bicentennial of the Revolution when they marched on the chateau and took out the monarchy of France. Now today we have another battle starting outside of its gates, the battle between a Frenchman, Laurent Fignon, and an American, Greg LeMond. Just 50 seconds between them after more than 2,000 miles of racing, and it comes down to the time trial, the race of truth between two men. Paul Sherwin, the answer we all want to know is who's going to win the Tour de France?
Well, I'd like to know as well, Phil, but I think logically it looks as if it's going to be Laurent Fignon, but with that small gap, I mean, it's not definitely finished yet.
Now, in the time trial between Dinard and Rennes, in the first 30 kilometres, Greg LeMond actually was 64 seconds ahead of Fignon. Logically, 24 kilometres today, he could do it.
He still can do it, and because of the kind of course that it is today, the faster the race is, the more it's going to suit Greg LeMond because he's a lot faster than Fignon. Fignon is a better rider when it's a stronger course.
Now, Fignon yesterday showed all the signs of strain as the leader of the Tour de France. He attacked the cameramen again as they approached the railway station, and one wonders if the tenseness has now got through to him.
Yeah, the tenseness was already showing when he was on the podium after the finish of the race, receiving his yellow jersey. You could see in his face that the worry was there, and I think he's a little bit scared about Greg LeMond.
Now, honestly, Paul, who's going to win? It's going to be close.
It will be close, but I think logically it's got to be Fignon.
So Paul goes for Laurent Fignon. I'm going to split the difference, Richard, and go for Greg LeMond, because LeMond is a very determined competitor and he will not give up the fight for this final yellow jersey. One thing I'm very confident about, and that is this Tour de France will be the closest finish in the history of the race. It could be decided, you know, by 5 or 6 seconds, and that would be absolutely unbelievable.
Wouldn't it just? Well, we'll be hearing from Phil and Paul very shortly now when we join them for the first pictures of today's time trial stage. Greg LeMond has got a lot to do. France expects of Laurent Fignon. The spotlight is on those two, but there's interest outside of them as well. Sean Kelly, for instance, who'll win the green jersey today. He wants to celebrate with a stage win, and we're hearing whispers from France that Sean Yates is chasing victory as well. Watching the race with us tonight, Mick Bennett, a cycling pro for some 10 years, and now the manager of the ever-ready Gold Seal team, and Liverpool's Joey McLaughlin, a winner of the inaugural Tour of Britain. Joey, Mick, good evening to you. 50 seconds as of now, Joe. You're probably closer to it than anybody else. You know these two men. Is it possible for Greg LeMond?
Like Paul Sherwin said, it could be possible, but I mean, Fignon's got 50 seconds in the bag, and I'm going to go for Fignon. I don't think it's going to be possible.
24.5 kilometres, that's 15 miles. That's not very far, is it, to make up 50 seconds?
It's not very far, and also, as Paul Sherwin also quoted, that Fignon's a very fast finisher, and let's say it's only going to be 20 seconds at the most at the finish.
Mick?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it technically, he's almost got to go 2 seconds per kilometre faster than Fignon. It's virtually impossible at this stage, I would say. OK. Stay with us. We'll talk more during the course of the programme. That's why we'll leave it for a couple of minutes. When we come back, we'll be watching our first pictures from France today, the last of the '89 Tour de France. Don't you dare go away. Welcome back. We're on the final day of the 1989 Tour de France, one of the best for years, and it'll be decided tonight at the end of a time trial into Paris. The stage, 21, the last, 24.5 kilometres, 15 miles. For some of the riders, satisfying quite simply because they've made it. For others, significant because they're amongst the prizes. For Laurent Fignon and Greg LeMond, 15 of the most important miles in their lives. Before we go to France, we're hearing that Thierry Marie has produced the best time of the day so far, 27 minutes and 30 seconds. Sean Yates is in third place now with a time of 28 minutes and 7 seconds. The gap between LeMond and Fignon, remember, just 50 seconds. It'll be some ride by LeMond if he turns that round. Let's join our commentators, Paul Sherwin and Phil Liggett.
We join now Greg LeMond out on the course. These triathlete handlebars here, invented by a downhill skier to give the cyclist, his aerodynamic position on a bicycle, have worked so well for him in the time trials this year. And in fact, Cyril Guimard, and he should complain, Paul, because he's the man who always brings in the new ideas, has said that these should not be allowed in the Tour de France because they do not meet with the regulations.
Well, he says that they don't. I'm not sure, really. It's all a question of interpretation. Greg, in fact, likes them very much. I thought they might inhibit his breathing a little bit because it brings the arms in very close together. But when I asked Greg, he said, you tell the others that it affects my breathing, but I'll keep using them.
Well, let's see how he goes today. I wonder what on earth he's thinking about now, Paul, every time he looks down, because he's just got to produce pure speed. It's not just got to be the best time of the day. He's got to win by almost a minute.
Yes, but the advantage of these triathlon bars as we go down to the bottom there is Laurent Fignon. I'd hate to think what's going through his head at the moment, but to come back to these bars, in wind tunnel experiments, it's apparently once you start riding at speeds over 50 kilometres an hour, which is what Laurent is doing at the moment, because on the motorbike before he was doing nearly 70 kilometres an hour, that is when you get the biggest advantage of these handlebars.
Well, as we watch Fignon depart there, it brings back memories of two other great Tours de France. In 1964, when Jacques Anquetil was leading the race by just 16 seconds ahead of his old rival, Raymond Poulidor. Anquetil, the time trial specialist, increased his lead to win the Tour by 55 seconds. And then in 1968, 21 years ago, when we finished in Paris, but not here on the Champs-Élysées, it was Jan Janssen who reversed the situation, beating Herman van Springel and taking away the only yellow jersey he won. It was the one that mattered, the final one home to Holland, victor of the Tour de France by just 38 seconds. And there's a feeling deep down that we are going to watch history being made here by either Greg LeMond or Laurent Fignon, because I think this will result in the shortest ever victory margin for one of them.
Well, you can just look at the speed of Greg here. It's impressive to watch him. He looks quite comfortable with those triathlete bars. I tried them out myself once. I wasn't too convinced, but that was only about 15 miles an hour. Here, at over 30 miles an hour, Greg LeMond looks very, very comfortable with his arms in the middle of the handlebars there, and he's using probably a 54 or 55 tooth chainring to get that speed right up there.
Well, if you look at the contour today's stage, it's gently downhill from the Chateau, which in days gone by, when it wasn't part of the environment of Paris, probably stood out by itself in green fields, and it drops away towards the city of Paris. Wide boulevard to start with, but it gets very twisty, very tricky as we go through the suburbs of the city, and that might favour LeMond.
Well, I think it will, because Greg handles his bike very, very well. But it's on this earlier part with the long boulevards and these triathlete bars that Greg might be able to make up his time. Fignon normally starts a time trial quite slowly, and if Greg can pull back a lot of time in the initial part of this time trial here, then he might have a psychological advantage over Fignon, because the thing is, Fignon will be getting time checks all the way along the route here from his team manager Cyril Guimard, who probably have put people along the road here with telephones or walkie-talkies.
Well, Guimard is the shrewdest manager of all of the managers in the world of cycling. He's produced 5 Tour de France winners. A little bit of a flick there from Greg, and I don't quite know why, but he's moving now back onto his line. And in fact, he was the man who was the motivator of Greg LeMond before Greg moved on to another team.
Greg really getting down into a low-profile position here. You notice he keeps putting his head down to get himself into as an aerodynamic a position as possible, and he keeps nodding his head back up again just to make sure he's going in the right direction. I think that's probably why there was that little bit of a switch there. He was losing his line somewhat.
Just look at the crowds here, Paul. They've waited all day. In Paris, it is a wonderfully sunny day, but it is very humid indeed. Temperatures in the high 80s. And inside the city, it is really very, very muggy. It's not really the day to bring out the best speed, is it?
Well, not really, but the riders are doing at the moment something like 50, 51 kilometres an hour.